Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo! Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo!
The Bills make me wanna shout.
Welcome to the Circling the Wagons podcast, a podcast discussing the Bills all year round with interviews, news, recaps, and insightful fan discussion. Most times. Here's your host and lifelong Bills fan, Nate.
What is up, Bills fans? Welcome to another episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo Rumblings podcast. I'm your host, Nate. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a really cool episode for you where we talk to Angela Raimondo, a former Buffalo Jill cheerleader. We discuss a number of different topics regarding the Jills, the Buffalo Bills at the time, about how she became a member of the Jills in 1986, Jim Kelly's first season in Buffalo, the process of becoming a Jill. Of course, we have to discuss the lawsuit that's still ongoing, her thoughts on the lawsuit, and why it's still not settled. We talk about her post-Jills career as a member of the Miss Universe organization with a couple of cool stories about our current president. So that was really fun. And then she lives in the DC area right now. So we talk about what she misses most about Buffalo now that she lives in the DC area, including a ton of food. So hope you're not hungry right now. It was a really fun podcast. It was a really fun interview to do with Angela. And I'm really glad that we were able to hook up on Twitter. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So without further ado, our discussion with Angela. She was a Buffalo Jill cheerleader in Jim Kelly's first season in 1986 and was part of the Buffalo Jills in the pre-Super Bowl era from 1986 to 1988. She's still very active in the National Football Cheerleaders Alumni Association, and you can find her on Twitter at AngieUSA. And I'd like to welcome Angela Raimondo to the podcast. Angela, how are you doing? It's great to have you on.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm glad we could get this together. Let's go into, when you started following us on Twitter, I noticed that you mentioned that you were a former Buffalo Jills cheerleader. We messaged a couple of times back and forth, and I thought it'd be a great chance to have you on and talk about your experiences. So when and how did you get into becoming a Buffalo Jill?
Well, I cheered in high school. I went to Depew High School, and the end of the year, they always had their conference playoffs at what was called Rich Stadium then. So my very first experience even being at the stadium, I was on the field and cheering on the sidelines. And I just remember looking up at, it was a mostly empty stadium and thinking, oh my God, it must be amazing on a game day to be down here. And then I didn't really think about it until a few years later. I was in college and I was cheering for the Buffalo State Bengals. And one of my girlfriends, we were talking about going out that night, and one of my girlfriends said, well, I can't go out. There's Jill's tryouts in the morning. And I was like, what? Tell me about that. And she told me, and I showed up the next morning, and I tried out, and I made it. And I was shocked. And when we had our first practice, we went around the room and introduced ourselves, and people were saying, well, this is my third time trying out or my fourth time trying out, and people were practicing for weeks. I was just shocked, and I couldn't believe how lucky I was to have made it like that and on my first try.
So you were in with just one practice. That was just the process at the time, was just you just showed up and you did a few hours? Like, how long was that?
Yeah, you showed up in the morning and you learned 2 cheers, and then you chose one to perform in front of the judges. You had to do a little introduction, and they said to do something that the judges would remember you or, make you stand out. And I came up with this silly little rhyme, and I can't believe that I actually said it. But it was like, hi, I'm Angela, and I cheer for Buff State. The Bengals are good, but the Bills are great. They all laughed at me, but I guess they remembered me.
Yeah.
And then you did your routine, and then they did a cut. And I think it was about 4 or 5 hours we were there. And by the end of the day, I had made the squad, and I couldn't believe it.
Wow, that's incredible. First one and done, and you were just in there. You only need one chance. There were other girls that needed 3 or 4 chances, and that's incredible. Well, I mean, as far as, your day in and day out obligations to the Buffalo Jills, I mean, what did you have to do? I mean, how often was practice? How long was practice? Was it a grueling thing? Because you said you were going to college at the time. I mean, how tough was that?
Well, it was tough. You definitely had to make the time. The requirements, my first year, it was Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 until midnight, and we were at the stadium. I remember there was a room with all the helmets. That's all I remember, the helmet room up in the administration area that we would meet, and then we would go in the parking lot and practice. I even remember making us run laps around the stadium my first year. Mm-hmm. And we would just be in the parking lot dancing until about midnight under the lights. And then you'd had, game day. Those were the 3 requirements. But you also had to stay in shape because you were given a weight limit. And you could not go over that weight. You got weighed in every Thursday. And if you were over, you were benched. So, some people didn't have to work hard at it. I did. I had to work out and diet and make sure that I was always, made my weight. But then there were appearances, and those mostly were optional. I loved doing them, so I would usually sign up for as many as I can just to get out there and meet people, and it was a lot of fun.
Can you give me a couple of examples or stories of different, different things, events that you went to, or people that you met, or things that you didn't think you necessarily would have done had you not been a Buffalo Jill?
I remember being on a celebrity softball team once, and there were different people from the local news stations that were on it. Let's see. I had to judge a cutest baby contest out in, I think, Eden once. The fairs, always the county fairs. I had to go back to my high school once for a grand opening of something that they had there, and that was a lot of fun. It was just being out in the community and, meeting people, especially the young girls who always looked up to you and, being asked for autographs, and that was a lot of fun.
So take me through game day Sunday as a Jill. I mean, you mentioned practice on Tuesday and Thursday nights. What was your entire day like when it came down to cheering for the Bills on Sunday?
Well, we obviously had to get there pretty early before traffic started. So I remember pulling in to empty stadium parking lot. We parked over by the tunnel, so we had our own little area that we would park at. We would practice. We used the locker room that the maintenance crew used, so we didn't even have our own locker room back then. So, we would practice in case anybody was sick or didn't show up. We had to change formations, and then lining up in the tunnel to go out and just feeling all those butterflies in your stomach, and going out for the team introductions was always great, and all the pregame activities. And then there were 4 lines of 10, and we would line up in each of the 4 corners of the stadium. And every quarter we would rotate, so you would be in front of a different set of fans each quarter. And we used to stand on those hash marks, the dotted yellow line. Mm-hmm. It was like right up there, right on the field. They don't stand that close anymore, and there's a lot more people on the sidelines than there used to be. We could actually see the game. I don't think they can see the game that much now. And then I always remember it was the 2-minute warning. That was Ralph Wilson had this rule: at the 2-minute warning, the Jills had to leave the field. And I hated that, especially when it was like a really good game and it was really close, that we had to walk off the field. And a lot of times the fans would make comments to us like, "Why are you leaving?" And so we couldn't really explain to them that we had to. So we would stand in the tunnel and watch the last few minutes of the game from there. Mm-hmm. But then it was always fun that once a season, there was one program book that had the Jill's picture in it. And that was always fun because when you left, and usually outside of the tunnel, there's fans that are waiting for, the players to exit for autographs. And then the one week that the Jill's picture was in there, people would ask for autographs, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, you were a celebrity then. That's great. Did you now? I have to ask you this: Did any players ever run into you by mistake while you were facing the fans, or while the game was going on, or were you always facing the players?
Well, we were facing the fans when we were performing, and then, which could only be in between games. When the plays were happening, we had to be facing the field so that we could watch, exactly for that reason, too.
Oh, gotcha. Now, I didn't ask this earlier, but were you a Bills fan before this? I assumed you were, but I figured I might as well ask you.
I was a Bills fan, in as much. I was pretty young. I was 19 when I made the squad. But, my family, everybody always watched the games. I'd never been to a game. I would say I was definitely a bigger fan once I made the team.
Now, you talked about like the game day experience. It sounds incredible as far as, walking through the tunnel and performing in front of all those fans and probably seeing, some amazing plays and the crowd go wild just being down in the field. What was the most memorable game in general that you cheered for in your tenure?
Yeah. I think every cheerleader remembers their first home game as a rookie. And with mine being also Jim Kelly's first game as well, there was just so much more excitement around it and so much more tension and hype with Jim Kelly, coming on. So that was probably the most exciting game. There was also one time, or once a week, there'd be a Jill of the Week, and they would announce a Jill, kind of like they announced the players, and you come running out of the tunnel. And I got to be Jill of the Week once, and I just remember hearing my name on the announcer saying my name and running out. That was pretty cool, too.
Oh, that's awesome. So, how was it? You mentioned, being, part of Jim Kelly's rookie season. Your first game was his first game as a Buffalo Bill. How was it to be part of those teams that had so many Hall of Famers on it? Did it seem like it was destined for greatness, or did you see more of a struggle? Because I know, in Jim Kelly's rookie year, they went 4-12, and they didn't do too
Right.
great the year after. But their third year, they started to kind of put it together. What did you see from the team itself?
Well, nobody could know at that time. I certainly didn't. My first year, there were, I think, 3 home wins, so you didn't really think this team was going to be as good as they eventually got. My second year in '87, it was also the NFL strike that year. So there was no week 3. And then on week 4, where the replacement players were, and we were told we had to cheer. You're not cheerleaders for the starters. You are Buffalo Bills cheerleaders, and you have to be there. And that was it was such a surreal game, because I remember there could have only been maybe a few hundred people in the stands. And I actually have a picture of me with the end zone behind me, and you can literally count 20 heads in the stands just from that section.
Wow.
So, yeah, I definitely was there during the struggles. And then my third year, when I made the squad in '88, the tryouts were in the spring, and we practiced all through summer. But then I got a job. I had just graduated, and I got my first job out of state, and I moved to the Philadelphia area. So I didn't actually get to even start the season that '88 year, when then they went on to, dominate the AFC so much of the '90s. So I got to watch that from TV.
Now, would you have if you got a job in Buffalo, would you have stayed a Jill if you could have? You didn't move?
I would have. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Now,
and who would have known? Who would have known the year I leave? They start to get great. I watched all my girlfriends go to those Super Bowls and travel. But I was definitely happy for them. But yeah, I was definitely jealous.
Oh, so you followed them even after, you had cheered for them and followed that whole Super Bowl run, and you became more of a Bills fan, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. And as much as you can, because back then, the internet really wasn't around, no social media. You didn't really get a lot of Buffalo news in New Jersey. But I think the only reason was because they were winning games and they were on television that I was able to do that. And even now in D.C., it's hard to get any type of news about, Buffalo without being on social media.
Of course. Well, that's where, Buffalo Bills podcasts come in,
Exactly.
Shameless plug for the Buffalo Rumblings Podcast Network. So, we mentioned like the guys. I mean, what were the guys, the players like that you actually, minus the strike, the replacement players? I mean, what were the actual players like? I mean, did you have any favorites on the team, or ones that you got along with?
No, I mean, that was the number one rule, was that there was absolutely no fraternization between the players and the cheerleaders. And if you were caught, you were immediately off the team. Mm-hmm. So,
well, Angela, you're not part of the Jills organization now. You can tell me. I'm not going to report it to anyone. You can tell me if there was one that was actually nicer. Was that really how it was? Absolutely, no one talked to them.
No, it really was. Oh. I have heard stories that during the Super Bowl years, that there were some really crazy parties at Jim Kelly's house, but I wasn't there, so I'm really not too sure.
Now, was that before the Super Bowl, when they, or after the Super Bowl?
I think it was just during the Super Bowl season. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I would expect.
But I wasn't part of that.
Yeah. Wink, wink. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's
so
awesome.
Actually, I got to meet players more after being a Jill. Around here, actually, there's a bar, Jimmy's Old Town Tavern in Herndon, that I've watched some of the Bills games at, and he does a big fundraiser every year. And I got to watch a Bills game with Butch Roll and Scott Norwood, and that was really cool.
Very cool. How were they to talk to and everything?
I spent a lot of time talking with Scott Norwood, and he is just so humble and so sweet and just such a really nice guy.
Gotcha. That makes me feel good. What I always appreciated about, Bills fans in general is that, you hear other franchises, like there was that famous guy who caught a foul ball in a game in the World Series in Chicago, and now he can't live in Chicago anymore, And then you hear Scott Norwood, and when he came back from the Super Bowl, their first Super Bowl loss, which he missed that field goal, which was a long field goal. I don't think anyone truly blamed him. Everyone wanted to hear him in the crowd, in the parade. They said, "We want Scott. We want Scott."
Yes, I remember that. I wasn't there. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Now you've lived in Buffalo, for all the way up until college. You've lived in different places. You mentioned, South Jersey, Philadelphia area, now in the DC area. I mean, do you see fans like that now, like the Buffalo fans that you came to know growing up?
Well, I see Buffalo fans everywhere, and it always seems like wherever I go, even on vacation, I'll see somebody with a Buffalo hat on or a Buffalo shirt on. Mm-hmm. And, you look at them and you're like, go Buffalo and go Bills, and you instantly have a friend. So, yeah, I do see them around, and we do have several Bills backer bars in the area. And actually, we just had an Anchor Bar franchise open up near me in Maryland, and they show the Bills and Sabres games. So it just seems like there's Buffalo fans everywhere.
What's something that, I think all of us Bills fans, and one of the reasons I love the fact that you and I have been able to talk is that, every time, like, I'll post something on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like every once in a while, like every few posts, somebody will just say, bring back the Jills, and they'll talk about the Jills. They miss the Jills. I mean, this will have been the 6th or 7th year that the Jills haven't performed. What's something that most fans don't know about the Buffalo Jills in general that you wish they did?
I don't think that they understand that, they're very accomplished women who are passionate about football, and they love the Bills just as much as they do. And sometimes it's hurtful when you see a post about the Jills come up and you read the comments, and there's a lot of people that, say negative things like we don't need them, and they're not good for anything, or even worse than that, that I don't think people really realize, how much of fans that we are and how much hard work and time and dedication it is to not just to become a Jill, but just to work one season. It is a big time commitment. And I think that's kind of why, it led into the lawsuit as well.
Well, as far as the lawsuit goes, now I can't obviously talk to you as a former Jill without bringing up the lawsuit at all. I mean, what can you discuss about the lawsuit? I mean, as far as I know and I've read, there are 5 Jills that are filing the suit, based on, pay that they didn't think that they received, which was basically minimum wage for all their appearances and stuff like that. I mean, what are your thoughts? I know it's in litigation, so you can only say so much, but maybe what are your thoughts on that lawsuit?
Right. We're really not supposed to comment on it. Just my personal opinion on that. And I don't think a lot of people know that it wasn't just the Buffalo Jills who brought suits similar to that. There were about 5 or 6 other cheerleading squads in the NFL who also brought suits for minimum wage. I mean, I really don't think that minimum wage is a lot to ask for. You have the concession people and the ticket takers and even the janitors. They're all making minimum wage at least. Why not the cheerleaders? So, in one sense, I feel that should be something that is given to the cheerleaders. But then on the other hand, when you make the squad, that very first practice, they lay out the rules and they tell you this is not a paid job. This is volunteer time, and you do it because you love it. And if you agree and cheer that season, then those are the terms that you agree on. So, I am a little split on that. When I was a cheerleader, all we got was one season ticket to each home game, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you would get a paid appearance. Most of the times you didn't, and you knew that you were doing it because you love it. Now, as we see, times are changing. So much is changing now. NFL team names. And, maybe it is the time for the change. But, and you don't really get change unless you speak out. So I'm a little split on that. And I think a lot of the Jills are as well. But I know that when I did it because I loved it and not, to make money.
Mm-hmm. Now, the lawsuit it's lasted almost 6 years now. I mean, do you know why? Are you aware of why it's taking so long to get through and finally have a settlement? Because, in my opinion, I would love to have the Jills cheerleaders back. As much as I love the drum group, for the Bills, it's not quite the same. And I've had season tickets where the Jills have been there, and I've had season tickets where they haven't been there, and it's a little bit different. Do you know what's dragging this out? Because I'm hoping that whenever this ends, at any time for all of the all franchises, not just the Bills, that we will get cheerleaders back, with the organization.
Yeah. Well, the difference with the Bills and the other teams, most of the other teams, if not all, have settled with their cheerleaders, and they all have won their minimum wage cases. The difference with the Bills is that the Bills were never they never sponsored or managed the Jills. Even from the very beginning, our founder, Joanne Gowland, when she went to Ralph Wilson and proposed the Jills, because at the time it was the Buffalo State cheerleaders who would come over and cheer at the game before the official Jills. So when she went and proposed the idea of the Jills, he agreed, but he said that he didn't want to manage it. So we were like an independent group, independent contractors for all of those years, and that's about 50 years. So throughout the years, we had sponsors. When I was a Jill, it was Mighty Taco, and then it was Kiss FM, and it was Citadel Broadcasting, and different sponsors would come along throughout the years. So when the other teams brought suit against their, the other cheerleading teams brought suit against the NFL teams, they were owned by and run and managed by those teams, whereas the Jills are not. So I think that's the reason why it's been in litigation so long, is because they don't know who it is that's responsible. Is it the sponsor? Is it the managers? Is it the Bills? Is it the NFL? And that's what's causing part, or at least most of the delay, I think.
So what are you up to now in life post Buffalo Jill's cheerleader career?
So the most of my career, I was with the Miss Universe organization, and they run the Miss USA and the Miss Teen USA pageants. And the woman that I worked for, she was the director for 6 of the state pageants. And I worked for her as a coordinator. Maryland and Illinois were my 2 states. So once we had our winners, I would manage and prepare them for the national pageant.
Oh, wow. How did you get involved in something like that?
It was kind of a friend of a friend. I was just starting to get into event management, and somebody knew my director and asked if she needed help, and I was just kind of starting out and going to George Washington University for their event program, and I needed some experience, so that's where it started, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, I know, at least I think I know from the Miss Universe organization, that there was a time when a certain elected president was in ownership of that organization. Was that true?
Yes.
Were you involved when Donald Trump was part of it?
Yes. Well, when I started, CBS owned it, and I believe it was my second year that Donald Trump and NBC bought it, and they were the co-owners for the time that I was with them. So he would be at the national pageants, so I would see him there.
And did you have any interactions with him, or what was it like? I mean, this at this point, he's just a billionaire celebrity. He's not, future president.
Right.
I mean, what was it like? Did you have any interaction with him?
Well, I met him once personally, even though I always saw him after the actual pageant and the crowning of a new title holder. There was always an after party at the hotel and a VIP section that only certain VIPs could get into. And one year, my Illinois title holder came in second runner-up, and he really liked her. He wanted her to win. So when I was speaking with her, he came up and, introduced. He didn't really say much to me. He was, I was too short and brunette for him to look at. So I met him there, but after that year, he was always so upset that either the woman he liked didn't win, or he felt that the prettiest ones weren't winning, that he actually had the rules changed. And instead of the preliminary judges deciding who would advance to the semifinalists, preliminary judging was always the day before the actual TV show. Mm-hmm. And then on TV, you would see them actually cut to the top 15 or top 12. So he had it changed so that the preliminary judges would only choose half, and the other half would come from the Miss Universe staff, which was him. Mm-hmm. And so he started to request to meet all of the contestants, and he would come in during rehearsals, and they were all lined up by, their state name, and he would kind of go down and meet them all. And unfortunately, a lot of time he would then turn around and tell the Miss Universe staff who his picks were right then and there. And, the girls were right there, and they would either hear or not hear their state. And that was hard. I remember one of my girls, calling me very upset because she felt that if he didn't like her, she wasn't going to do well. And unfortunately, that was kind of the case at the time. So
wow.
Everybody knew that, everyone knew that he had a lot of influence there.
Wow, that went from a very interesting story to like, oh, I can see him kind of bending the rules, to wow, like that's just kind of not very empathetic.
Right. And then, the semifinalists would then compete on stage, and there were, live judging with judges during the telecast. to determine the winner. He wasn't doing anything there, but everybody knew that he wanted to make sure that the prettiest girl won.
Oh, interesting. What is it like? Have you been to a Buffalo Bills game now as an ex-Buffalo Jill, or I'm sorry, a Buffalo Jill alumni? I apologize. I didn't mean that. My dad always said, once a Marine, always a Marine. So I feel like once a Buffalo Jill, always a Buffalo Jill.
Exactly.
Have you been to a game?
So I've only been to 2 games in Buffalo since I stopped cheering. One was the very first year after I had moved away, that first season, and I was just heartbroken. Oh, I couldn't believe I wanted to be down there so bad. And I had my Jill's jacket on, and I was in the end zone near the tunnel. I was only maybe 10 rows up. And I was telling you how the lines rotated every quarter. So every quarter I would go down to the wall and I would say hello to all my friends and we would do a cheer together. But I was still very jealous and very sad. But then I didn't go back until, I think it was around 2011, where they had all of the Jill's alumni come back and do a dance pre-show for breast cancer awareness. In October, everybody's wearing pink. So all decades, we had ladies from the 1960s that were on the field dancing. So we all kind of came together to do that one dance, which was amazing because I hadn't been back in the stadium and I never thought I would ever be able to perform on the field again. So that was just amazing. And other than that, I mentioned I'm in the D.C. area. So whenever the Bills play either Washington or the Ravens, I'm always at that game, repping with all my Bills and Jills attire.
That's so awesome. You talked about going to games now, if they're in the area. I mean, what are your thoughts on the team now? Do you like what, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have put together the past few years? I'm
very excited for this season, and I can't believe that, I'm still hoping that this season is actually going to happen, and I'm just so interested and excited to see what Josh Allen does this year. I don't really follow. I can't really give you statistics and give you the lineup and all that. But, yes, I'm very excited. And even when I don't get the game or I don't get to, a local bar that's showing it, I'll just kind of watch it on my iPad and, watch the game progress.
I tweeted out that, we just found out, at the time we're recording this, that New Era Field is no longer going to be called New Era Field because the stadium is changing their naming rights from New Era to something else. And so I kind of put it up on Twitter, what would you name it? And there were some interesting ones. What was your favorite that you saw so far?
Well, I love the people that said call it Mighty Taco Stadium. I love that because when I go back to Buffalo, it's the first stop that I make is Mighty Taco. I usually see at least 3 people from my flight in the line with me. But what's funny about that is the year that I cheered, Mighty Taco was our sponsor. We had to wear Mighty Taco patches on our uniform, and every Monday night it was Jill's night at the Mighty Tacos, and there were always 2 Jills at every Mighty Taco that season signing autographs. And I would sit there and, talk with all the people that came in and take pictures. And then right after, I would take my uniform off, get changed, and have a Mighty Taco before I leave.
That's awesome. Now, what's your go-to there? Is it a Super Mighty? Is it a regular taco? What's your favorite?
It's the Super Mighty. I can't believe how much that menu has changed over the years, but I have never had anything but a Super Mighty there.
Now, are you a cheese or no cheese? Do you get sauce on it? I mean, sour cream. What do you like?
Yes, absolutely. I get the cheese, I get extra sour cream, and I get it hot.
Oh, nice. Now, do you top it all off with a Loganberry?
Loganberry, you have to get a Loganberry. Nobody in any other place that I have lived or traveled has ever heard of Loganberry before.
I feel like it's a necessity. I mean, it's never been anywhere, I've ever been to besides Buffalo and some parts of Rochester, but really just Buffalo. And my wife tried it for the first time, just a few years ago, and she's like, wow, this is really good. I'm like, yeah, why isn't it everywhere? Right?
it's amazing just how much buffalo food is truly only in Buffalo, and you just cannot find it anywhere else.
Now, just
what I miss most.
Is that what you miss most of Buffalo?
Well,
the
I
amazing
should
food?
say I miss my family, but
yeah.
after my family, I miss.
Oh yeah, all those people, yeah, sure. But really, it's a Mighty Taco. Well, what are some other places that you like to go to when you're in Buffalo? Because I know you said you're coming back soon. I mean, what other places are you going to hit up that are fan favorites? Because we have a lot of listeners that aren't in the Buffalo area or are from the Buffalo area and have moved away or overseas serving. And you know, what name some places that's going to make them reminisce either of, you know, being back at home in Buffalo, or some people that have never been to Buffalo that need to go and try these places.
So, you know, I grew up in the Depew, Cheektowaga area. So my favorite for wings was Otto's, and I loved Danny's by the airport, and John and Mary's chicken finger subs, and just getting some bison chip dip and loganberry, and I'll have Mighty Taco at least 3 times if I'm there a week. My family knows this. They know that they cannot plan any meals until I get enough Mighty Taco. But bocce pizza, it's just amazing. Yeah. I can't wait to have that. That pretty much sums it up. Those were my favorites.
Now, I feel like, you know, since I've lived in Buffalo for a while, and I remember, you know, there was a certain type of pizza that started to, that I never had in the Rochester area and in other places in Western New York. And it was that like spicy cup pepperoni, and I haven't found it a lot of other places in the country. Have you found that anywhere where you've lived in the several different stops that you've made?
Never once. And by me, all I have are the big chain restaurants. I won't name them, but there is just nothing like that pepperoni char. They did open something up in Virginia, which is about an hour drive for me. I have to make my way down there. I forget what it's called. But yes, I truly miss that. We have an event in D.C. every year. It's sponsored by the New York State Senator, so Chuck Schumer sponsors this Buffalo Night in D.C., and about 800 people get together once a year on Capitol Hill, and all of these Buffalo food vendors bring in their food, and Charlie the Butcher is there, and there's mountains of sponge candy that people fight over, and you get your Jenny and your Labatt's and New York wine, and there's always pizza. Oh, it's just amazing, and the bison chip dip, and people just fight over this food. It's so amazing, and we get it once a year, and it's just not enough.
Well, that sounds. I'm so hungry right now. I already had dinner. I'm so hungry right now from the discussion. You know, well, Angela, you know, I really appreciate you coming on. I know it was kind of impromptu from our meeting over Twitter, but you can, you know, everyone can find, you know, Angela on Twitter at AngieUSA. That's ANGE USA. And, you know, appreciate you coming on for sure. And, you know, I hope that when you come back to Buffalo, the next time you're in Buffalo, I hope you're not just getting a super mighty. I hope you're getting the super pack, because I think that's the only way to go.
I will give that a try. But thank you. It was so much fun. Just the trip down memory lane and reminiscing. And yes, I'm very hungry right now, too.
I really want to thank Angela for coming on and talking the Buffalo Jills, the lawsuit, a ton of different other topics. It was really fun to talk to her. And as we mentioned during our interview, that the Bills are releasing New Era from the naming rights for the stadium where the Buffalo Bills play. So it will no longer be called New Era Field, which kind of felt weird to begin with just because it had been Ralph Wilson Stadium, and even Ralph Wilson Stadium felt weird because it had been Rich Stadium for so long. So there have been a lot of really cool ideas out there, and there's, like we mentioned in the podcast, like Mighty Taco would be such a cool sponsor if it was Mighty Taco Field. The Bills playing at Mighty Taco Field, or like Jim's Steakhouse Stadium, or Ted Hott's Field, or something cool like that. I would really love it to be a local sponsor somehow, to get in and to just give a national showcase of that field and the great food that Buffalo has. Because the last thing I want, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, is it to be like a named Bank Stadium or a named insurance field or whatever. Like, I don't need First America Bank and Insurance Stadium. You know, I don't want something like that. I want something cool. Like, New Era Field was cool because it had to do with this cool clothing company in Buffalo at the time. Obviously not so much now, but there's just something to that, as opposed to, it's just like, have you guys ever had, you know, a building or something being built on a corner near your neighborhood or where you live in the area? It's like, oh, like something's being put on that corner, like something's being built, there's construction being done. What's being built in that lot? Is it something cool? Is it like a food place, or, you know, is this cool store I haven't thought of, or whatever? Like, really, we're all hoping for a food place. Like, is it a Chipotle? Is it a Taco Bell? Like, what is it? And then, like, 9 times out of 10, it's a bank, or it's a CVS or a pharmacy or something like that, where you're like, oh, great, you know, like, it's just not as fun. Like, I want a food place. I want a clothing manufacturer. I want something fun. And so that's my only thought on that. I hope New Era Field, and, you know, if it doesn't end up going from New Era Field to something really fun, I hope it's just, you know, Buffalo Bills Stadium. I hope it goes back to either Ralph Wilson Stadium or something to commemorate the former owner of the Buffalo Bills. Just something that's just generic and pays tribute to the past or veterans or somehow the city of Buffalo. So, quick TeePublic plug for our TeePublic site. We have a lot of cool Bills designs. We have over 50 different Bills designs in our TeePublic store that can be put on t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops. I'm rocking a Buffalo Bills tank top theme design that we created. We have one that was called America's Real Team, which shows some cool buffaloes in red, white, and blue with some stars and stripes. It's a cool design that's on there. We are releasing a new Buffalo Summer design as of Monday morning, so you'll be able to see that for 30% off. So it'll be $14 t-shirts and tank tops and all that fun stuff. So check that out. We have all of our very, very popular designs, like our Josh Allen Hurdling the Haters design t-shirts. We have our Sean McDermott Trust the Process t-shirt. And all these designs, all 50 designs, are available on masks. So what's cool about TeePublic is they put all of the designs, especially with everything going on with COVID and coronavirus and the pandemic that we're all facing. My wife went out. I don't go out that often because I just don't go out that often. My wife went out for the first time in a controlled environment. So before anyone gets upset, it was an outdoor arena. Everyone had to stay in tables 6 feet away from other tables. And she was wearing a regular, healthcare mask, one that she wears in her job in healthcare. And she was the only one that was wearing one that didn't have a cool design on it. And she's just like, well, I kind of felt lame. And I'm like, yeah, like masks are the new, form of attire and apparel and stuff like that. Soon you're going to see like Gucci masks and all these, it's just becoming a trend, and TeePublic has that. So all of our Buffalo Bills theme designs. And if you go to our store, you can search, you can go search anything. Like I put a couple of non-Bills designs that I love on there. There's one that's the Catalina wine mixer.
This is a fucking Catalina wine mixer.
I have the Catalina wine mixer design from the movie Step Brothers. There's one where there's this bear chugging beers called, it's not a dad bod, it's a father figure. So some cool stuff on TeePublic. You just got to check it out. That site is teepublic.com/stores/CTWpod. Again, I'm going to release that Buffalo Summer design, which is really cool for t-shirt, tank top, mask, anything you want. They have it, everything, coffee mugs, cell phone cases. It's a really cool site. Again, that site is teepublic.com/stores/CTWpod. I really want to thank Angela Raimondo for coming on again and discussing all of those things. At first, it was just like, oh, you're a former Joe, like that'd be fun to talk to. And she just had so much more to talk about. And I was really glad that I got the opportunity. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Oh, and also please subscribe to our channel where you can get some really great podcasts, including Believe, Rumblings Q&A, Breaking Buffalo Rumblings, Chat with Nick Bat, the Bruce Exclusive, and Blitz Bills. And we will have you covered all through training camp. Hopefully that starts when it's supposed to and everything goes well there too. And there's going to be a ton of different topics to discuss. I already have a whole page of different battles, different questions, and from listeners and different things to really just kind of mull over as training camp goes into the regular season. So for me, Nate, go Bills, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod @gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.